Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Planet X News. This is Scott from the Nibiru channel, October 13th, 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, I just received in my email this announcement that has come from the European Southern Observatory. And this observatory is located in the high mountains of Chile. And there's been a lot of great observations made from the ESO. And I just found this so amazing that this is actually going down. And it states media advisory press conference at ESO headquarters announcing unprecedented discovery. Now, this press release was issued on October 11th, 2017, 48 hours ago. It goes into the information. ESO will hold a press conference on October 16th, 2017 at 1600 hours at its headquarters in Germany. Groundbreaking observations of an astronomical phenomenon that has never been seen or witnessed before. Wow. This is absolutely incredible, ladies and gentlemen. I am just wondering, deep in my mind, what are they about to announce? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Planet X News. It is October 18th, 2017. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a little bit of a special report for all of you this early afternoon. I'm joined by Dr. Albers this afternoon. How are you, Doctor?
I'm very well. Thank you, Scott. And how are you?
Not too bad under the circumstances. Now, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. We're going to be experiencing some very, very unusual and possibly catastrophic weather systems and weather patterns from this point on. Now, I just uploaded a video to YouTube about 30 minutes ago pertaining to these weather systems. I pretty much detailed it for everyone, so whenever you get a chance, if you haven't watched it, go back, watch it, and share it with your friends and your family members. Now, earlier this morning, there was another pretty large coronal mass ejection on the sun. And I've been charting and watching for these coronal mass ejections for many, many months. Last week, if you watched the live stream that Dr. Albers and I conducted, I pretty much laid everything out for you as far as the timing and when we should be seeing these coronal mass ejections and why. Over the course of the last 9 months, I've pretty well charted out where Planet X, these objects are actually in this orbit around the sun. I mentioned to you the first couple of days of every month, things will be, they'll be relatively calm. And then around the 5th, 6th, 7th of the month, we're gonna start to see the sun interacting with Planet X. And the reason being is because of the orbit that it is, the orbit that it's in around the sun, and it's also rotating with the sun. If you missed that live stream, ladies and gentlemen, go back and watch it. It was just last week, and it was very informative. Now, once again, I mentioned in that live stream that as we progress into the middle of the month, we're going to see 1 or 2, possibly even 3 coronal mass ejections, and that will continue through the 3rd week into every month. Well, lo and behold, here we are a few days into the middle of the month, and several coronal mass ejections. And there was some activity brewing on the 14th, 15th, and 16th of the month already. leading up to these explosions on the sun today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not gonna sugarcoat shit and call it candy. Under the circumstances right now, we are going to be heading into some very severe times. There's just no doubt about it. Things are happening all over the world, and they are going to become more and more extreme as the weeks go on. As far as Dr. Albers and I, we're not going to be uploading videos every single day, regardless of what is happening. We're just being censored too much. It is entirely too much of our time for almost nothing. We don't even know how many people that we are reaching. Are we reaching, thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands, millions? We don't know. That's how bad the censorship is. And it's going to get worse. We have massive fires burning out in California. It's going to get worse. It's not going to end. You have massive fires right now burning in Portugal. And as I mentioned in the beginning, all of these weather anomalies, they are going to get intense. They are going to get very bad. I would advise each and every one of you, if you have not watched the special report that I uploaded 30 minutes ago, you might want to go back and watch that whenever this live stream is over. Now, leading into the coronal mass ejection that occurred between the 17th and the beginning of the 18th, I saw some strange things. Once again, I know where to look for this object. I know where to look, and I know when. I've been telling everyone this for quite a long time. So, we're just going to go ahead and just cut right to the chase here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody, and I'll show you some of the photographs that I captured earlier this morning. Now, this was just about right before the coronal mass ejection. This is a kind of a negative appearance of the sun, a negative as far as the photograph, inverted, whatever you want to call it. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can clearly see, I mean, you would have to be completely blind to see what is staring right at you in the left side of your screen. I mean, it almost looks like Jupiter with the stripes. I mean, if we didn't know the exact position of Jupiter right now, I would say, wow, that looks exactly like Jupiter. But it's not. As I stated in the beginning of this live stream, I know exactly where this object's going to be, because now I have already charted its pattern around the sun. And these occurrences, these events, it's going to leave us in the path of destruction about 24 days out of every month. 24 days out of every month, we're going to be walking on eggshells. We're going to be walking that tightrope. There's just no other words that I can use, ladies and gentlemen. It is what it is. The coronal mass ejection today was pretty big. There were actually several, weren't there, Doctor?
Yes, there were two actually very close to each other, but on from opposite sides of the sun. One at 6 UTC and the other one at 6:24 UTC.
Yeah, there was also some missing time that was associated with that also. The guy from Suspicious Observer even reported on that 6 hours of missing time.
Yes.
Just, gone. I caught this image several days ago. If any of you didn't see the video, then you're not coming back to my channel. You're not getting the notifications. There's nothing I could do about it. As I've stated before, it's up to you. Come back to this YouTube channel at least once in a 24-hour period, and you will assure yourself to get your updates. And you will see what I'm seeing and what the doctor is finding. This object was at the 10 o'clock position. There's no doubt that it is there. And this was just several days ago, 5, maybe 6 days ago. I knew it was going to be there, so I was just watching for it. And now that it has made its way to the lower left-hand corner of the sun, as it was moving past the left limb of the sun, that's when the coronal mass ejection occurred. This has been an ongoing pattern now that, again, I've been charting this for the last 9 months. Each and every time, the calculations are right on the money. It's right where it should be. That is telling me it is in a sustained orbital pattern around our sun. There will be no end. There will be no end to what you're witnessing. I don't care what anybody else says. I personally think, based on what I've been observing, this object's not going to conduct any type of breakaway and leave our inner solar system. I believe these objects are here. They're here to stay. They are in a massive magnetic tug of war with the sun. The sun has already captured them, and they are there. That's it. Listen, folks, I know a lot of you follow a bunch of Facebook groups. I know you follow a bunch of other YouTube channels, but here's the bottom line. When you come to this channel, you're going to get the information straightforward, right in your face. Not going to sit here and blow a bunch of smoke up your rear end. It is what it is. So from this day forth, I'm telling you, no matter where you live on the face of this planet, you better get yourself and your family, your loved ones, you better get everything in order today. Today. These objects, several of them, I believe, are very large, much larger than the planet Jupiter. And again, I don't care what anybody else is telling you. Period. I don't care what you're seeing on Mexico Mexico webcams. I don't care what you're seeing on FAA webcams. Okay? None of that matters. What matters is that we are getting very good visuals of this object where it's at. And it is in an orbital pattern around the sun. You're not going to see this in some webcam in the middle of a plaza in Rome, Italy, that looks like, a flare or a light source coming from a lamp post. You're not going to see this object or these objects on webcams. You're not going to see that. Please stop following that information as of today. Or don't. It's your prerogative. I'm sure all of you can hear and sense the frustration in my voice today because, I'm realizing wholeheartedly that the situation that we are going into is very severe. You have a lot of people out there, ladies and gentlemen, that are pretty much just forcing other types of information straight down your throat. There is massive amounts of disinformation floating around. It's almost like saturating the market, desensitizing each and every one of you to the real information. What's really happening? I can't do any more than I'm actually doing. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another folder here.
Mm-hmm.
Got the one that I wanted? I think not. Now, the photographs that you're going to see here, ladies and gentlemen, they're related to the coronal mass ejection that occurred very, very early this morning. This is a negative image, inverted image.
Yeah.
You can see this object here. This is just a few days ago, and this is leading up to this coronal mass ejection. Just as I've told you, I know exactly where this object's going to be, according to the time of the month.
Yeah, I think you're very good at picking these objects up, Scott. It's amazing.
Oops, where's the rest of them?
Mm-hmm.
We'll just go backwards. I took a whole bunch of these photographs here today.
Yes, you did. You showed them to me. It's very clear. There you are.
Now, this is a couple of days ago, and again, folks, this is leading up to this coronal mass ejection, and each and every time this object starts to make its way around the sun, and it's got kind of a weird elliptical orbit. It's not like the orbit that the Earth travels along, which is a pretty flat plane. And it seems to be getting worse as the months are going by, and getting into this seasonal change once again between both hemispheres. We're just going to see some things that are going to be very, very extreme. And I'm warning each and every one of you today that you better be prepared in whatever way you possibly can.
Yeah.
Oops, gone the wrong way again. Now, this is just a black and white image of the object.
Yes, but it's so clear that there's an object there, Scott. It's just, and they don't usually come alone. I think you've seen images where there's more than one there.
Yeah, there's definitely smaller bodies that are joined in with this object. One thing that I do agree with is that this object definitely has smaller cores orbiting around it. I haven't really been able to figure out those orbital patterns. They're probably in a pretty flat plane orbit around this object. They're much smaller, so they're very obscure. They're very hard to see in any of the images that we're getting because they don't produce any type of light. We are relying on the objects being illuminated by the sun. and they pretty much have to be in a certain place at a certain time when we can capture them. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to move on. These photographs, again, they were all publicized on the Planet X News Facebook page and also in the latest video that I did the other day on it. Here's a pretty clear shot of the object right here. This is one of the best and clearest shots that we're getting from a few days ago. Once again, another shot.
Very clear, yeah.
And these are just a few, oh, not even a few hours, folks. Maybe, we are getting the views of these objects. Now, let me get into today. And I believe we should be about to go from here. Now, this was the coronal mass ejection. This was caught on the cactus, coronagraph C2. And this was right at the end of the coronal mass ejection. It was only one frame, really couldn't do too much with it. But this was the end result of this object coming from just about where this white line is. Coming from about this point here, and then it slowly moves downward. And as it moves downward, these are where the massive eruptions are beginning. When this object comes down, it moves close to the sun's equator, and then it continues on its pattern downward. This is where we're getting these coronal mass ejections constantly on this side, always around this time of the month. So there's really not much to see in that photograph other than the actual explosion itself. It's a composite image of what I was looking at first thing this morning. Started looking into some detail to see how far down this object has come. I'm looking for it down here in this range. And I don't know if you guys can see, but there's a spherical object right here. It seems to be kind of striped. And right here and right here. Well, actually, there's three. There's three smaller objects right there. They shouldn't be there.
No, they shouldn't, Scott, but they are. They've been coming in for years now. And I think we just have larger ones that have come in recently that are just causing the sun to go a bit wild.
Now, in this image here, this is a few frames going forward. This is just about, maybe an hour or so before the actual coronal mass ejection occurred. As I stated before, the object was going to be moving from the 10 o'clock position, coming downward, and lo and behold, we have it right here. And it is already enveloped in the sun's corona. And there definitely seems to be a magnetic connection between the sun and the object as it gets this close to the sun. I have better images coming up, but I wanted to show you the raw images of what was seen as it was occurring. Now, this photograph here, I know it just looks like a big, fluorescent green blob, but this actually occurred when the coronal mass ejection was beginning. This was the actual photograph taken from the SDO spacecraft. The energy was so intense that it overwhelmed the detectors and the sensors on the spacecraft. And this was the image that was produced for one split second. It literally took me 10 minutes.
Wow.
10 minutes to capture this image here.
Oh my.
Yeah, nothing was done, no color alterations. That's just the overloaded sensor.
But that's a huge flash, Scott. It's amazing.
Oh, it's pretty intense.
Mm.
I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit, and you're seeing a pretty good sizable plasma ejection from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all occurring right before this massive coronal mass ejection.
Wow.
As we move into some other images and some other wavelengths of light, what looks to be a coronal prominence forming right here
Yeah. It's
is
not.
in all actuality, I mean, you could define it somewhat as a coronal prominence, but ladies and gentlemen, what is enveloped within this prominence is our own planet X right here. It's right here, and you're going to see more photographs in the next few minutes that are going to prove it. Now, I was watching, and I was taking frame by frame and literally watching the plasma ejections from the sun literally attach itself
Mm-hmm.
to this object as it was passing by. Now, this was something that this green square, this was something that just, it's within the photograph. It's within the frame. I have no idea what it is, but it was in the frame.
Mm-hmm.
I started looking at it a little more closely, and, it's kind of weird that this green
Yes.
overlay was there, but you can see the dark, perfectly round shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the photographs I'm showing you folks, these are in progression, frame after frame as this coronal mass ejection was occurring. We're going to move a little bit further into the coronal mass ejection. You know what? Let's see if we can clear this up just a little bit. There we go. And now you can see you do have a huge plasma loop. Huge.
Yes.
I mean, that thing is massive. But right within that plasma loop, you can see.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely there, Scott. I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. It's right where it should be. It's right where I calculated it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And again, folks, it's not going anywhere. It's going to continue to cause massive disruptions on the sun. And as I have mentioned many, many times before over the course of the last year, I have already told each and every one of you that our biggest fear is not from planet X, but it should be from the sun. And that's proving to be completely true. Because now that we've had this coronal mass ejection over the last couple of days, some smaller ones and leading up to this larger one, the intensity of the earthquakes has increased, especially in California. Over the course of the last 48 hours, there have been several very, very deep earthquakes in Chile and right along the border in Argentina. Very deep. Also, several very deep earthquakes in the South Pacific. One of them was 593 kilometers deep once again.
Yeah, that's very deep. Yeah.
About 12 hours ago, there was another very deep earthquake just south of Japan. I'm going to go ahead and just move on here. Now you can see the object. It's right here.
Yes.
You can see a very, very clear.
Yeah,
Okay?
I can see it clearly, Scott, and I can see possibly some smaller ones around as well. Yeah, it's definitely there. You've caught it. And these ideas that they came up with of prominences, well, I thought from the beginning it possibly be a way of trying to hide these objects being there, you know. So they are definitely there, and they are affecting the sun. We are getting these CMEs. The sun is reacting to these objects. It's obvious. Often we see the little plasma connection between these objects. And this is how I pick them up sometimes. I look for that little root, the plasma connection between the object and the sun, because they are drawing plasma from the sun, basically, and having magnetic connections with the sun.
Yeah, it's definitely getting worse, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, each and every month that goes by, the situation is becoming more and more bleak.
Yes. And why it's getting worse as well, Scott, is because the sun is getting weaker. It's finding it more and more difficult to hold on to its plasma as it gets weaker. So the explosions that occur when these objects come very close to it are increasing in magnitude. And I think that's what's happening.
There's no doubt. There's definitely no doubt. And again, ladies and gentlemen, the photographs that I'm showing you, they are in a progression. So we're progressing through these different frames as this object is now passing by. So again, this is the same pattern that we've been seeing for about a year now. And I've been watching this and I've been charting this now for it's been a total of 9 months, going into 10 months. So it's been the same progressive pattern over and over and over again for 9 months. So that is telling me that this object is in a sustained orbit. It's not going anywhere, at least anytime soon. Now this was just taken off of the SOHO coronagraph, the C2, and this was well into the coronal mass ejection. And what I noticed was just something very, very odd, a very, very well defined spherical object.
Yes.
It's being illuminated right here. And folks, I don't know if the way that the camera is taking this photograph, if it's being magnified by the coronal mass ejection. I don't really know. These photographs from SOHO, they can tend to be a little confusing, but you know, in all honesty, how would you have a perfect sphere with a dark outline right around it? Now, the bottom portion of it is covered by the big plasma ejections. And if you just take a look at the formation of the plasma ejection, look how circular it is.
Yeah.
It is enveloping another spherical body. Plain and simple.
Yes, I agree, Scott.
Let me see what I have on this photograph.
Yeah, I've noticed lately how the CMEs are more and more circular. I've been observing this for quite a few weeks now. How the outline of the CMEs is so circular on the outside. And I don't think CMEs have always looked like that. They're supposed to have a sort of a chaotic kind of pattern, not so round on the outside as they explode out of the sun, but they are more and more round. And as you say, it is due to the plasma having to go around a spherical object.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty cut and dry. That doesn't take some, major science to figure that out.
Yes.
Now, this is in the latter stages, and here the object is moving further away from the sun at an angle, and it's starting to appear ever so faintly, and it is right there. So I don't know how you can deny that. You know, it's just, let me see what else I have in this one. This is just another frame. It's getting a little further away. I can't blow it up, but you can see it right here. You just let your eyes tune in on that. I have much more clearer photographs coming up that change the contrast a little bit to bring out the detail. Let's just get into those. And this is another one getting a little bit further away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And once again, this is going back to the same photograph. I just had it in the mix.
Yes. It's good to see again that circular pattern that has to be due to a solid object being close in the sun's corona.
I mean, here it almost looks like it's close to the same size of the sun, but very hard to judge.
Yes. It could be moving towards us. Or...
Now, getting back to these photographs as it was moving away, you can see its outline right here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crystal clear right in your face. It's right there.
Mm-hmm.
And here you could even see just a little bit of the plasma still attached here at the lower bottom. You can see the spherical body right here. It's still engulfed in the coronal mass ejection. Just another frame. You can see where the plasma was attached around here. It is now dissipating. You can get a better view of what was there.
Yes. Definitely.
You know, folks, you could go through this video once it's uploaded and processed onto YouTube. You can go through it slowly, stop your video player, and you can take screenshots and you can examine the information for yourself. That's what I would advise you to do. Now I changed the color, the contrast a little bit, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a better view of it. But it's so hard because of the deep red color of the C2 coronagraph. So it's very hard to do.
Yes.
But the object is there.
Yeah, it's more difficult to see these because they are enveloped in the CME and in plasma. So we have to rely on the circular edge around these objects, which will be in the CME as well. But this is why I usually use the image of the blue stellar core, because that makes it obvious what these objects really are like, how they are solid objects.
Exactly. Now, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, ladies and gentlemen, about other smaller bodies orbiting this larger object, this definitely proves to me beyond a shadow of a doubt, these smaller objects are here. There's one up here. There's one here, here, here. There are two more on the outskirts over here. There's one down here and one here. So there are several. Now, I know that Venus and Mercury have just transited behind the sun, and they were pretty visible. But they would not be in this position because they're not visible on the C2.
Yes.
They are visible on the C3. And what you're looking at here, you're looking at the C2. This is the red coronagraph. And this by far is one of the best photographs capturing these smaller objects. Smaller objects are related to Big Bertha right here. And there's no doubt they're there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that we can actually see without a doubt. They're there. So these are the smaller stellar cores that are associated with this giant. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is undeniable. I don't care what you try to do to debunk any of this, because you can't prove it. You can't prove that these objects aren't there, because they are. They're staring you right in the face. The only thing that others can do is make up excuses and stupid lies to try to trick you and deceive you and fool you. That's a devastating photograph there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this photograph here, we actually capture two of these objects. I mean, they're completely three-dimensional.
Yes.
There's one here, there's one here, and these two are definitely three-dimensional.
That's right. And they have to be in front of the larger object.
Yes. Now, this is going towards the end of the coronal mass ejection. This is more of the outstreaming, the outbursting, whatever you want to call it. And there it lies again. And you can see one of these other objects here. You can see one here, here, and here.
Yeah.
So it's just progressing through the frames. This is a little bit of a lighter filter. Again, we're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5, 6, 7. And these objects they're all associated with this object right there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not background stars.
No, definitely not.
Again, just different filter change. I'm trying to get my hands on these smaller objects that are within this orbit. It's just very, very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you can see this object is progressively moving away from the sun in this direction. Yeah, that's what I say. Here's a different filter. This is going backwards. Whenever we were capturing this big object, I just added another filter. And again, folks, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get these other smaller objects. We know the big one exists. But as you can see, there are many. 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, they are everywhere in association with that monster.
Yes.
And again, folks, this is all today. This is just a few hours ago. Now, Dr. Albers had prepared a report, and we're going to go ahead and get into that report right now.
Yes. Thanks, Scott. Right. So what I did was I looked at the CMEs that happened today, October 18th. The times are always in UTC, so it's 6 hours behind us. 6 hours ahead of us. So 6 UTC was actually made midnight for us. And so I looked at the first two, and there was one at 6 and another one at 6:24. The larger one was at 6. So it's the large green one there. Was at 6. And you see the double 2 there next to, there's a whole table with CMEs. So the second from the top is the 6 o'clock one. You see there's a 2 there. The two ones in the last column means that it's potentially a full halo event. That's the one you're circling is the one at the top. That's the 6:24 one. and then the other one at 6 is the large green one. And that was potentially, the two ones means it's potentially a full halo event. It wasn't quite a full halo, but it was a large event. Okay. And also mentioned there that it didn't look like there was any solar flare associated with it. I know you caught that flash, which may have been a solar flare, but then they haven't given us the data regarding that solar flare.
Yeah, that's not in. Probably within the next 24 to 48 hours, we'll have more information on that.
Yeah, perhaps. But what I'm saying is it may have been hidden, Scott, because we will see later. I'll show you the solar flares. So what we have here, this is again the cactus data on the CME. It shows you how strong it was. And I usually look at the maximum velocity, which is 1,358 kilometers per second. And that maximum velocity always gives you an idea of how strong the CME is. And this one was therefore quite strong. Yeah. So you can see it you see at the top it says min V and max V and then halo 2. So the max V under that says 1358. That's kilometers per second. So that's the top velocity measured for the plasma in the CME. So this was quite a strong event, and it's quite a strong explosion, as you can see. And it was from the right-hand side. And then we see in that image as the sun explodes from the left-hand side with that larger CME, starting to see another CME on the right, a smaller one. So this is the 624 that happened then. So if we scroll down a little bit, and we can see the 624 again. You see the maximum velocity associated with it is a bit lower, 1041, right? And that shows you it wasn't as strong. It wasn't, the angle of the explosion was not as large from where we can see. And so it wasn't as large, but it seems to be associated because it only happened 24 minutes later. So, or what we can say is that there were objects on the left-hand side, which you showed us, Scott, that were leading up to this very, very large CME. And there was probably at least one object or smaller objects on the right-hand side. So both the left and the right, we have now objects provoking the sun into having these CMEs. That's what I think. So that's what I tried to show there, but you show these images as well. And you can see the patterns in it, the circular patterns in the left-hand side, one that shows that definitely there were probably large stellar cores there, provoking the sun, connecting magnetically with the sun. Remember, these objects cannot be planets because the sun's corona is extremely hot. The temperature varies from 800,000 Kelvin to 2 million Kelvin usually. When we have solar flares, the temperature can go up to 30 million Kelvin. And so these objects would melt if they were planets. The inner core of the Earth would melt at these temperatures, so they have to be denser. So when an object is denser, its melting point goes up. So these densities are produced in the interior of a star. That's why I call them stellar cores. And they are old stars. They've gone through an aging process where they release their outer layers of gas until eventually the core itself becomes exposed. And that's what these objects are. They don't emit light, at least when they come to the sun. They emit infrared radiation because they still have some heat. They have high magnetic fields that they connect to the sun. They absorb plasma from the sun and energy in the form of light. Eventually, they tend to rejuvenate and may be able to start emitting light again. Right, so if we just move down some more, Scott, we'll see I have a C3 image that shows the CME on the left and the smaller CME on the right, both developing and moving away from the sun. And as you can see, you did mention the two planets that may be there. Those are the two. They are further away from the sun. So that's why you couldn't possibly have seen them in the images that you showed.
Yeah, you'll have Venus and Mercury over here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's the CME in the, this is at 8:42. So both CMEs were then moving away from the surface of the sun. Yeah. Then I showed that there was the only solar flare data I could find was the one that happened. It was a B2 class that happened about 9 o'clock, or a little after 9 o'clock. So if you look at the October 18th line, each line after that at the bottom is 3 hours. So that's the first line is 3 UTC, the second is 6, and the third is 9. So about 9 o'clock, there was a solar flare event. And as you can see, there's no data on anything else, Scott, before that. So this is why I think maybe if there was one, it doesn't show up on the data that we are seeing. In other words, it's being hidden.
Most definitely. They're going to start hiding things even more and more.
Mm-hmm. And then I showed here, you showed as well that there were large numbers of earthquakes. There was the Tonga one that happened just 4 hours after the solar flare, and we can see lots of new earthquakes on the western coast of the United States. And it shows that there's activity, there's something going on. It's either a very strong magnetic field due to an object being close to the Earth, or coming in the solar wind, and it's ionizing our ionosphere. We're having induced currents in the ionosphere. We're having induced currents inside the Earth, and these are leading to these earthquakes. I'm not sure that a B2 class solar flare would lead to this kind of activity. That's why, but we're definitely having it, and it's either solar flares, or we did also have a large coronal hole, and I've been writing about how these coronal holes are connections that the sun's making with these stellar cores or brown dwarf stars, but they are further away from the sun. When they are further away, you get the coronal holes. When they are in the sun's corona, we seem to have these CME and solar flare events. So I was just pointing this out here that we did. We seem to have something happening to the Earth as a result of these objects. And this is the only thing I could find at around this time that could have been that B2 solar flare. It's on the left of the sun. It did get brighter. This is an X-ray image. And we see on the left-hand side that area where it's brighter. And it seems to be a bit behind the sun as well. So I don't know how it could have affected the Earth so dramatically unless it's being affected by other things as well. Yeah, and here I show the coronal hole just below the equator of the sun. So these coronal holes, we would get fast-moving particles from them, including possibly cosmic rays, very fast-moving particles that would go right through the magnetosphere and impact the Earth, and also cause these induced currents inside the Earth. But it was strange that the data didn't show a lot of fast solar wind impacting the Earth. In fact, the speed of the solar wind went down on October 18th. So I have shown before, and I do show in the diagram below, Scott. There's some data, I think. Okay, so you can see here in the data the speed which is the purple line, as you can see going down. So this does not indicate that the Earth is being impacted by a fast solar wind. What this possibly indicates is that there is an opposing solar wind. So this would come from the object that is behind or outside Earth's orbit. I sometimes say behind the Earth. I know some people take exception to my saying that. I mean outside of Earth's orbit. This object is interacting with the sun. It's causing these coronal holes, and there is a particle stream coming from the sun towards the object, and then there's another one coming from the object towards the Earth. So depending on the Earth it can be in the one or the other. If it's in the one from the sun to the object, we'll feel the impact of fast solar wind. But if it's in the stream of being from the object to the sun, then it will feel an opposing stellar wind. But you can definitely see that the speed of the solar wind impacting Earth went down, as you can see from the beginning of October 18th. It went straight down. The temperature went down as well, which means the energy of the solar stream particles went down. The density did go up a little bit, but not much. I don't see anything happening with that magnetic field. It has to go far down for us to get a geomagnetic storm just due to the strong magnetic field in the solar wind. Nothing like that happened here. There was some variation in the angle of the magnetic field that shows in the light blue. As you can see, there's a discontinuity from below the dashed line to above the dashed line. That means that the magnetic field is changing direction rapidly, and that's usually due to, it can be due to a CME sometimes, but the magnetic field itself, the Z component, is not strong enough to produce a large geomagnetic storm. So if we look down some more, Scott, I think it's my final image where I've drawn, this I actually drew for my, it's from my last article, and it shows the solar wind stream from the sun towards the stellar core. And you can see, because I showed, this was from October 13th, there was a huge anomaly on the corona magnetogram. And it showed that the Earth was being impacted by something. It didn't seem to be coming from the sun. So I thought there's possibly another object and outside of Earth's orbit interacting. We could see the coronal hole on the sun, which is created by this magnetic interaction between that stellar core and the sun. But it seemed that the Earth was not in that stream until October 13th. And now I haven't drawn it here, but imagine seeing the Earth moving a little bit further 5 days later. It would then be in the purple stream, which is the returning particle stream from the stellar core towards the sun. And then what would that do? That would oppose the normal solar wind that's always enveloping our planet. And that would cause a drop in the solar wind speed. And it still means that there's an object there somewhere. The Earth is being impacted by its magnetic field. So we have both things happening. We have the sun with stellar cores in its corona that are affecting it strongly. It's having strong solar flares. We possibly not being shown all the solar flares that are happening because Scott you caught that large flash. And we having these large CMEs. Some of them may be hidden from us as well. There's time missing in the data. So, and we have stellar cores that are possibly still coming in towards the sun because they are attracted to the sun. We may have one outside of Earth's orbit that seems to be interacting with the sun. These objects seem to have started coming in many years ago, probably in the 1990s, maybe even before then. We did find lots of them in the beginning. In the 1980s, we were told something about them, and then it started being hidden from us. We know these objects are in the sun's corona, and there's a large one possibly coming in. It seems to have a very strong magnetic field, and I don't know if this object comes right up to the sun. If it's already reacting the way it is, it's getting weaker, it's having more and more difficulty holding on to its plasma, as we saw, as you, Scott, showed us as well, and as I mentioned before, with more coming in, I think we can expect a large disruptions to the sun and the Earth to be affected strongly with possible cataclysmic consequences.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt things are going to get, yeah, they're going to get probably pretty bad. I got a really bad echo in the background. Let me see here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still occurring. No, we're also having a bad internet connection, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't hear anything, Scott. No echo on my side.
Yeah, I could hear it on my side. It's gone now, but we are already starting to have some intermittent internet issues. We'll probably definitely be in the midst of a geomagnetic storm here within the next. It's probably happening now.
Mm-hmm.
But very, very quickly, Doctor, I had one idiot in the live chat.
Yes.
It was going on and on and on about, gravity.
Yes.
And, obviously he was either a troll or just being a nuisance.
Mm-hmm.
You want to explain to everyone very quickly why the planets don't crash into the sun and why a stellar object like our planet X, these objects, why they wouldn't crash into the sun. So, basically what I'm asking is, there's another theory, the electric universe.
Mm-hmm. That's right,
gravity,
Scott.
And the whole gravity thing, it's just a really, really big issue, but
Yes.
I'll leave it up to you. You give them the scientific punch in the mouth.
Okay. So, Scott, starting at the beginning, I was trained like every other physicist. We are trained to believe that gravity is what drives whatever happens in the universe. And I was trained the same way as every other physics student. We are led to believe that this is the truth. Now, when I was lecturing to my students and they were starting to ask me questions like, what causes gravity? I had to tell them we don't know. And I had my own doubts by then as well. When I started trying to teach these things, some things did not make sense. And I started looking into it, but I didn't come to any real conclusions about what was going on until in 2016, I started observing the colors in the sky, the red sunsets, the red clouds, which I knew were not possible unless we had extra light sources close to the sun. So that's where I started investigating. I then found that the sun was actually losing light emission during the SDO. And, I don't want to go deeply into that. I have shown that that's what's happening. I have irrefutable evidence that that's what's happening. When I realized that the sun was going dark, losing light emission, I realized immediately that what was happening to the sun showed that it could not be having fusion reactions in its core. And it's not having fusion reactions in its core. What's causing it not to collapse? It cannot be that it's a gravitational object. And immediately I started looking at the electric theory of the universe, and I realized that if the sun can go dark and lose light emission, it's an electrical object. It's not a gravitational object. At the moment, the theories that explain what's happening on the sun cannot explain why the corona is hotter than the photosphere, because the theories are all based on gravity and they are wrong. And I've kept looking all over these months. I have discovered that gravity is actually due to an electrostatic interaction, like London forces inside a solid object. What happens is the nucleus of an atom is polarized. So the positive part goes to one side, the negative part goes to the other. That generates an electric field, and that causes molecules and atoms inside the solid to attract each other. And it can also cause bodies to attract each other. This is why London forces or molecular forces that keep solids as solids and together attract atoms to each other is a weak force. We all know that. And the gravitational force is a weak force for that reason, because it's due to polarization of matter. And it's therefore due to an electrostatic force. So what we observed as gravity, which is an attractive force, which is so weak, we know it's so weak because the gravitational constant is 6.67 times 10 to the minus 11. And that shows you a number well be 11 decimal points behind the zero in front of the point. So it's a very small number. Whilst the electric force is 9 times 10 to the 9, the electrostatic constant. So that's 9 divided by 9 zeros. That's 9 trillion. So that shows you the electric force is much stronger than the gravitational force. And what we actually observe in our system is the result of London forces of a system that's in equilibrium. That is a star with its planets. It's all in equilibrium. Nothing's changing electrostatically. Everything is in the right state. So we can model it with what we call is the gravitational force. But what leads to the gravitational force, what causes it, is an electrostatic interaction in matter when it's in equilibrium. Now, the moment we have these objects coming into the solar system, our system is not in equilibrium anymore. So we're starting to see the actual electrostatic interaction between these bodies. And planets have a certain core charge. They basically negatively charge. If two planets come towards each other, they will eventually repel each other, just like electrons repel each other. And stars will also will attract each other. There are two forces at play. There's the magnetic force and the electric force. The magnetic force is attractive. This is why stars form according to the Z-pinch effect. The Z-pinch effect actually causes plasma to be contained and condensed together to a point. That's what leads to the formation of a star. And the sun contains its plasma with its magnetic field. But it also has electric field because we have charged particles moving along the magnetic field lines. And when lots of them are concentrated along these plasma fields, we have a very strong electric field. And they are strongest when we have solar flares. That's why solar flares are so bright. What we are seeing is the result of very strong electric field. And the electric field is outwards. And so it will repel these objects. That's why when we have these huge CMEs, these solar flares, we see them moving away from the sun. They are repelled by the very strong electric field that is produced at that point. So this is what's happening. So it's the magnetic field of these, they have strong magnetic fields, but they are weaker than the sun. They have come to the sun basically to refuel. And they are attracted to the sun's magnetic field. They then make a magnetic connection with the sun. And then the plasma particles from the sun's corona flows along these magnetic field lines towards the object. That's why we have these coronal holes. They form coronal holes as the objects come in towards the sun. When they are in the sun's corona, the magnetic field connection is so strong that eventually we have an explosion. We have an increase of the electric field in that area, that spot, and then these objects are repelled outwards. So this is what we are seeing. We're seeing that the magnetic and the electric field between the sun and these objects in a system that's not in equilibrium. It's dynamic. It's changing all the time. I hope that explains it, unless you have another question for me, Scott.
No, that was, I mean, that's, yeah, nobody explains it as better, as good as you. That was, that was fantastic. I just want to, recap real quick. If anybody didn't see the report that I published, the video earlier today, the weather systems that we're going to be getting into, ladies and gentlemen, they're just not going to be good. If any of you have not seen the video that Dr. Albers and I did last week pertaining to pole shift and the severe wobble of this planet, I would advise you to take some time today, go back and watch that live stream. If you have to, listen to it again and again. It's basically telling you what is exactly happening to our planet. And whenever I did the report earlier this morning pertaining to these massive weather systems and vortexes, I once again explain what is happening to our planet, what's going to happen in a very short amount of time, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go ahead and let this model run out. You're going to be looking at a major typhoon or cyclone here. You're looking at another massive weather systems and vortexes here. Once again, another major system headed towards Ireland and London. And the fires in California, well, let's just face it, they are going to be being fueled once again by more and more of this wind. The reason this is happening is, once again, because of the jet stream. The jet stream is very, very erratic. Our Earth is wobbling. Our Earth is tilting backwards a little bit towards the, let's just say, the northeast, towards kind of like Siberia. Now, we know our magnetic North Pole is floating that way, but Doctor, you explained that very well, how the Earth is trying to maintain its course, but at this time it's very hard.
Yes, that's right, Scott. So what's happening is the magnetic influence of these objects on the Earth is causing the magnetic poles to shift. And I believe the geographic poles are at a certain fixed angle to the magnetic poles. So there's 10 degrees difference between them. But as the magnetic poles shift, the geographic poles would seem to have to stay at an angle. But so the geographic poles are changing position on the Earth. But what the Earth is now doing is it's tilting itself so that the poles are at the same position. So it's a new position in relation to the crust, to the Earth's crust. But it's the same angle with the ecliptic. This is what's causing the Earth to shift, to move, because the Earth is trying to keep itself aligned in the same position with the sun's magnetic field. So it causes different points on the Earth to appear to be at different points with respect to the ecliptic. But the pole itself is still aligned in the same way with the ecliptic. I don't know how long that will go on. For now, I think that's happening because the crust and the inner core of the Earth are fixed and fused to each other in some way. But this is causing the interior of the Earth to increase its temperature. Eventually, there may be a disconnect between the two, and then we will possibly get a large crustal displacement. I don't know what will happen then, but possibly something quite cataclysmic, because if we suddenly get a sharp change in the crust. For now, the Earth itself is moving as a whole. It's trying to find that right position with respect to the sun's magnetic field. And the whole thing is still moving together. But there is this tendency for the poles to shift, because now it's being affected not just by the sun's very strong magnetic field, which is the major component that the Earth is in, because remember how strong the sun's magnetic field is. It goes all the way out to 100 AU. The Earth is only 1 AU from the sun. So our solar system is huge, 100 AU, because of the sun's magnetic field. And the sun's magnetic field is what attracting these other objects to it. But they stars as well. They also have strong magnetic fields, and they are affecting the Earth. And that's why, and as they go by, because they're orbiting the sun, some of them have rejuvenated, some may have moved a little bit away from the sun's corona. More and more of them are arriving. We have more and more magnetic fields impacting the Earth. The Earth is wobbling. The poles are shifting. The Earth is always trying to find that balance. And eventually, we will get a sharp pole shift, I think. And that will be cataclysmic. We will then, we don't know where we will end up. At that time, the Earth may end up on its side, at least for a while. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's just only to be seen
Yeah.
in the future. And if it happens, it happens. There's no doubt. You know, Doctor, I'm going to ask you a personal question here. A few of the people in the live chat, they noticed that they said that your voice sounds nervous, or you sound nervous.
Yes.
Personally, over the course of the last couple of days, absorbing all of this information, seeing what you see firsthand with me.
Yeah.
How do you personally feel?
I am nervous, Scott. I have to be honest with you. I am nervous because of what I see happening on this planet. There are lots of things happening that we've discussed and we've seen, and we cannot even tell everybody what's really going on, but it's dire. And it has made me nervous, I must say. That's the truth.
Yes, it's definitely a nerve-wracking situation, especially when information is being held from you. You know, from one day to the next, ladies and gentlemen, you know, we don't know, you know, we really don't know what's actually going to happen. The only thing that we can do is stay, you know, steadfast and watching and trying to maintain all of the information, everything that we get in. But the censorship, ladies and gentlemen, it is it's worldwide. There's not one country on the face of this planet that is not undergoing some type of media censoring, whether it be social media, your television, whatever it is. You know, millions of people should be watching this right now. Millions. But they're not.
Yeah. I wish there were, Scott, because people need to know the truth. And if nothing else comes from this, I would like people to realize that we are in dangerous times. And if nothing else, we can only actually turn to God for help. There's no one else to help us. No one else.
That's true. Your governments aren't going to help you, ladies and gentlemen. You see what happens in these other countries. You see what has happened in Puerto Rico. You see what has happened in Texas, Louisiana. Excuse me. You see what has happened in the islands. You see what's happening in California. It's now happening in Portugal. And it's going to continue. It's going to continue, and it is progressively going to get worse as the days and the weeks and the months go by. The best advice I can give you is exactly like I said before. Get your house in order. Get your things in order. Get yourself a game plan. You know, don't get caught by surprise, because if you do, if you've never regretted anything in your life, you're going to regret that moment. At this point in time, I don't think there are any safe zones per se on this planet. And I don't really know what's going to happen day to day. Based on what I'm seeing, based on what we've been observing now, it seems that our theories are actually taking place. That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Very scary. But anyways, listen, ladies and gentlemen, this video will be processed and it will be up on the Planet X News channel right after this live broadcast. I will also share it on the Planet X News Facebook page. If any of you are not following the Planet X News Facebook page, the link is in the description box. Get over there today after this video. Start following it. Set up your notifications. That way you know when I'm uploading a video. I know a lot of you are on Facebook, probably 99.9% of you. So because of some limitations on notifications from YouTube, you may or may not get a notification that I've uploaded a video with important information in it. You may not know if we're live streaming, but you know, Facebook seems to be a lot more lenient on this this subject matter for now. So follow us on the Facebook Planet X News channel, or excuse me, the Planet X News Facebook page. I get them mixed up between channel and page. But anyways, this is what we had for you today, ladies and gentlemen. The rest of the month, from this point on, I'm telling you, things are going to get very, very eye-opening. There are going to be many events to report on, to look into, and to observe. So today, on this day of October 18th, 2017, you're hearing it from my mouth again. Whether you heed my warnings or not, that is solely up to you. Doctor, any last words?
Yes, thank you, Scott. And, you know, also believe in telling people the truth. I think people have the right to know the truth. And even though it's not good news, and as you said, it's not good. And I agree with you. It's not going to get better. These objects are not going to go away. They are now part of our solar system. And what's happening to our sun is not a good thing. Our sun is basically losing strength all the time. And we know what that will lead to. Eventually, it will become like one of these objects itself. It will basically be a dead star. It doesn't mean there won't be radiation and light, but everything will change in the solar system. It's changing now. But at the moment, the sun is, it's dangerous for the Earth because it can explode with a huge CME or solar flare that is Earth directed at any moment. So we are in danger. And the truth is, and I think God wants people to know that, because he wants people to get to know him, because he knows he can help people. And we need him. And this has always been my message at the end of these, that it's time to get to know him, to get to know Jesus, because he can help us and he loves us. And that's all I would like to say. Just develop a relationship with him, get to know him. And he ask him for help and to show you what's really going on. He will do that as well.
This kind of reminds me of the old SOS.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do whenever you are in jeopardy, whenever you are in trouble? You send out that SOS signal.
Mm-hmm.
Save our souls.
Yes. Save our soul. Very good, Scott. Thank you.
SOS.
Yeah.
So that's basically it, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we're at today on the 18th of October. I don't foresee it getting any better. Once we move past the next couple of weeks, we will probably hit a little bit of a lull in the very beginning of November, but you can probably guarantee by the beginning of the second week of November, we're going to be right back to where we are, and the situation will probably be a little bit more bleak than it is now. Remember what I said, ladies and gentlemen. Take today to really sit down and think. Maybe going to the store today, getting those few cases of water, some canned goods, flashlight, some batteries. Let's try to use our heads here at any given time on any given day. Per se, lightning can strike. And we don't know from almost minute to minute what's going to happen. And if you're not prepared, even in the smallest way, life's going to get real hard, real fast. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. We're going to be paying very close attention to what is occurring. As soon as I have any more additional information, I will definitely bring it to you. I want you to all pay very close attention to the weather systems and the weather patterns where you live. Don't worry about the rest of the world, folks. You pay very close attention to the weather systems that could impact your city, your state, or your country. Because believe me, in the days and the weeks to come, nobody on this planet is going to be out of the woods. We're going to be knee deep in it. That's a fact. I'd like to thank Dr. Albers for being with us today and taking her time, giving us her scientific view of what is occurring. Doctor, thank you very much for that. And I know,
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I know all of our viewers love to hear from you, and I know they appreciate your background in all of this. I'd like to also thank the moderators in our live stream today. I'd like to thank each and every one of you out there following us. And now it's up to you to do your part. Share the video. Talk about what is happening. Each and every one of you may think that you're just a viewer, but you're not. Each and every one of you, you're now an observer. You're now a researcher. You are now an investigator. The more and more you learn, the better off things are going to be. Remember, like I always say, knowledge is power. And right now, this is the only power that we have. We cannot afford to have it taken away from us. Remember that. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us this early afternoon. Make sure you stay updated. Make sure you stay tuned. God bless each and every one of you. Be safe. This is Scott from Planet X News and Dr. Albers, our Planet X physicist. Thank you very, very much for being with us this afternoon.